달라진 것이 없다. 좁은 집안에 온 친척이 다 모였다. 오늘은 특별히 귀한 음식인 말린 야마고기를 꺼낸다. 다 같이 모여 음식을 준비하는 데는 이유가 있다. 취재팀이 도착하기 하루 전, 이 집에 사내 아이가 태어났다. 게로의 혈통과 전통을 이을 또 하나의 귀한 생명. 막 몸을 푼 산모를 위해 말린 야마똥으로 불을 피워 야마고기를 끓인다. 그것 말고는 말린 감자 주녀를 끓인 것이 전부다. 감자를 여러 번 얼렸다 녹였다를 반복해 말려놓은 주녀는 잉카 시대 이전부터 안데스인들의 주식이었다.
If you eat yours all in one, you're a go-getter. Cadbury cream egg. How do you eat yours?
With whole of life, I'm set up with 200 destinations. Whole of life.
워낙 척박한 산중이어서 산후 보양식이라고 해도 별다른 것이 있을 리는 없다. 없는 살림이지만 누추함과 부족함을 서로 덮어주는 끈끈한 공동체 의식이 게로족에겐 남아있다. 이러한 상황에 취재진에게 특별한 요청이 들어왔다. 외부인의 방문을 길조로 여기는 게로족의 전통에 따라 담당 PD는 대부가 되어 아이에게 이름을 지어주었다. 희망 오로네스 기스페. 그 이름에 게로족의 희망이 되란 의미를 담았다. 코카잎에 술을 묻혀 세례 의식까지 마친 후 희망이는 드디어 게로의 아들로 진정한 잉카의 후예로 다시 새롭게 태어난다. 잉카의 달력에 따라 한 해의 농사를 시작하는 8월, 게로족의 일상도 분주해진다. 그런데 야마똥을 모아 퇴비로 만드는 일이 언제부턴가 여자들의 몫이 됐다. 많은 게로 남자들이 8월이면 도시로 나가기 때문이다. 한창 파종을 해야 할 시기인데 게로 마을에 오늘도 눈이 내렸다. 땅이 꽁꽁 얼어서 농사일은 못하지만 그래도 야마에게 풀을 먹이는 일은 거를 수가 없다. 이 마을에 도착한 날 가장 먼저 일행을 반겨줬던 루이사 아주머니도 요즘 쿠스코에 나가 있는 남편 대신 이 많은 야마들을 혼자서 다 돌보고 있다. 풍요를 기원하는 끼로족의 농요. 그들의 노래는 야마의 울음소리를 닮았다.
San Sebastián.
다시 쿠스코로 돌아간다는 취재진에게 그녀는 남편을 꼭 찾아봐 달라고 부탁했다.
So, if she see him now, what kind of word she want to say to him?
Коско печата панки сарики. Нят хну кайк барлай күня. Иман соңго икән. Чикада кузайга докуyor. Kuş gülüyor. Çimmanı kaçki aseti kaççı pori kız. Çik nanga bakımız. Kukacık mı hava bakımız kınız kuzay pori. Basate almas binandır lançak bir. Tespacı vente napi. Çeyla bibina kuzay topayt atayasiki. May binyan topawak bıs.
Nubbin can take you into forgotten memories, classic movies, even outer space. All without ever leaving your chair. Nubbin, it's better in here. Mine.
쿠스코 시내의 완차 시장. 죽은 어미야마의 뱃속에서 꺼낸 새끼를 말린 것부터 귀한 콘도르 깃털까지 이곳은 각종 주술 의식에 필요한 물건들을 전문적으로 파는 시장이다. 루이사 아주머니의 남편을 찾을 수 있을까 싶어 수소문을 해보았다.
Buenos días, señora. El sector de Colpacucho. Este señor es Juan Ordóñez Zapaz, es un curandero.
No estoy al tanto. Más abajo debe ser.
No viene a conocer.
No.
Hola, buenos días. Es uno de Queros. Siempre viene a comprar aquí esos paguitos de la nación Queros. Tal vez lo conozcas. Sí, debe ser una persona media viejita. Es uno de Queros. Siempre viene a comprar aquí esos paguitos de la nación Queros. Tal vez lo conozcas. Hola, buenos días. Es uno de Queros. Siempre viene a comprar aquí esos paguitos de la nación Queros. Tal vez lo conozcas. Sí, debe ser una persona media viejita, así que vive por ahí. ¿Y Chacho Che Picasa Enrique?
Sí, al otro lado de repente está.
¿Donde Jesús? Sí. Ya, mi hermano, muchas gracias. Hola, buenos días. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Quién es el hombre?
Ahí está, pues.
¿Cuál? Ordóñez. Hola, Juan. Imagina, ¿qué hacían aquí?
Buenos días.
Buenos días, Aliyanchu. ¿Y Chacho Che Picasa Enrique?
Sí, al otro lado de repente está.
¿Donde Jesús? Sí. Ya, mi hermano, muchas gracias. Hola, buenos días. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Quién es el hombre?
Ahí está, pues.
¿Cuál? Ordóñez. Hola, Juan. Imagina, ¿qué hacían aquí?
Buenos días.
Buenos días, Aliyanchu.
Aliyanmi.
Nokaiku Karaiku, Wasikipi,
Ari.
Walmikiwan, Luisa Paucar Japa, Ari, Escatacho.
Pues lo tengo aquí.
(8월) 한 달간 아들과 함께 도시에 나왔다는 후안. 그는 어디서 어떻게 일을 하는 것일까? 그의 일정에 동행해 보기로 했다. 그가 자리를 잡은 곳은 사람들이 많이 지나다니는 길목, 이른바 목이 좋은 자리다. 고객을 위해 별다른 방법을 취하진 않는다. 그가 입고 있는 전통 끼로 복장만 보고도 아는 사람들은 이렇게 찾아오기 때문이다. 우환이 하는 일은 국화잎을 던져서 점괘를 보는 일. 그를 찾아온 여성은 남편과 조금 문제가 있다고 했다.
Mana niya chur na kang insistin na man na kang esperanza.
Nanasun hokwa shu hokwa pek ahmajat par mastang man pa kam. Imaja tanyo imaja.
어찌 보면 덕담과 조언에 가까운 점괘지만 예로족의 영적인 능력을 존중하는 사람들은 그들의 말에 신뢰를 품는다.
Sí, bien. Adivina todo lo que sabe. Sí, realmente es increíble que lo hace, pero lo hace. Sí, lo sabe. Sabía todo.
Papay ka no se jajajero wani kwa papay wani kwa pum.
Saya baik sudah cacir.
Icha hokcha papay dap sediki. Kulikara osea mahambi de jajira rik.
Just that shamanism is so important is because I think what it really boils down to is a revaluing of personal identity. And that when you strip away the feathers and the chants and all the anthropological gimcrackery that goes along with it, what makes it so compelling and so attractive is that it is a more authentic state of being, somehow. Now why? It seems to me that the reason why is because theories about the world are based on direct experience. The shaman is a kind of provisional scientist, making it up as he or she goes along, constantly willing to revise and keep it open-ended. And information imported from without is extremely suspicious, which is the exact opposite of the way science, for example, does its work. In science, if you have a bizarre result or a peculiar finding, you immediately say, well, go check the literature. See if anyone else ever got this before. Then get them on the phone and we'll see if we can't duplicate what they were doing. What this creates is what we have, which is a vast, low-grade, inductively derived image of reality, where only those things which happen with the greatest regularity and the greatest predictability are authenticated by our languages. So we can talk about rain and sunrise and mealtime and obligation, because these things are repetitiously before us to the point where they have become known as smooth stones are known. But what is not repetitiously before us is the edge of cognition, the unique part of our own felt experience of reality. And the reason for this is very deeply rooted in the culture. It's that we believe in these bizarre notions like consensus, like uniformity of phenomena, predictability, probability. I mean, everyone here believes in probability. Who here could explain it to the satisfaction of anyone? I mean, we are adrift and embedded in a matrix of unexamined linguistic excuses for avoiding looking at how weird it is. And that is what the shaman is not. The shaman, first of all, basically has no real history, cannot consult vast libraries, is not in touch with the reputations, the overwhelming, stuffy reputations of his antecedents hundreds of years in the past. The shaman can usually ask one guy or one woman older than himself. And that elder represents what for us would be an entire epigenetic cosmos of data banks, libraries, hieroglyphic records, museum drawers crammed with artifactoria, so forth and so on. So the shaman's intellectual horizon in terms of what we call historicity is very foreshortened. Consequently, everything has to be explained out of energy that is unleashed in the psyche, energy of speculation, of myth-making, of imagination. And this is, in fact, then, what the function becomes, and what the shamans are doing. They are not consuming culture, they are generating it.
Till what?
Extra gum. Chew good.
Hey, Dr. McTee.
Oh, hey, Dr. Z.
I was just wondering, which culture do you think has the coolest looking gods?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I mean, a lot of cultures imagine that their gods look pretty similar to us, but with more limbs and maybe a few animal parts thrown in.
I mean, who wouldn't want an extra animal part thrown in? I would love to have wings. That'd be tight.
Oh, the tightest. But anyway, I think it comes down to how those gods accessorize, and for me, the gods and goddesses of Nahua mythology have always stood out.
I know, right? The bold colors, the expressive features, all those feathers. The Nahua definitely had some cool looking gods, but I think aesthetics were far from the only interesting thing about them.
Oh, for sure. The Nahua also have a complicated history and an even more fascinating creation mythology. You know what? I think we should do an episode about this.
Word.
Nahua sounds unfamiliar to you, it's probably because you're more used to hearing them referred to as the Aztec. The history is complicated, but the name Aztec was popularized by a German explorer in the 1800s to describe the powerful Mesoamerican empire. It was derived from the word Aztlan, which was the name of the legendary homeland that the people migrated from centuries earlier, but it's probably not what they would have called themselves. Neither Aztec nor Nahua describe a single group of people, but Nahua does describe the larger community of independent city-states who traded with each other, held overlapping beliefs, and spoke the Nahuatl language. By the time the Spanish invaded in 1521, the most powerful of these groups were the inhabitants of the empire's capital city, Tenochtitlan, in modern-day Mexico City. They called themselves the Mexica, which is where the word Mexico comes from. As their influence spread, not always through peaceful means, the Mexica adopted more than 100 local deities into their pantheon, while also inserting their own beliefs and stories.
Some legends say the Mexicas began a pilgrimage from Aztlan or northern location until they were urged to leave by Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and sacrifice. He bid them to leave their homeland and travel until they came to a place where an eagle devoured a snake resting on a cactus. For more than 200 years, they migrated south through land much harsher than the home they left behind. Weeds scratched them as they walked and rocks bit them as they slept, but Huitzilopochtli's guidance eventually led them to a small island in the middle of Lake Texcoco in the Anahuac Valley around 1325. This and most of the other stories we know from Nahua mythology come from pictographic records that describe their history, sacred rituals, and religious beliefs. The Tlatoani, or chief speaker of the empire, was said to own a whole library of these codices before most were destroyed during the conquest. Luckily, a few were kept safe, and the surviving Nahua continue to record their history in more codices for generations afterwards.
These codices also tell us that the universe in Nahua mythology is cyclical, so that the end of the world is really just another beginning. In the true beginning, there was nothing but an endless void, from which the dual-natured god Ometeotl formed. You may remember from our gender fluidity episode that Ometeotl was both male and female, made of the god Ometekutli and the goddess Omasiwatl. There are several examples of similar male-female pairs in Nahua mythology. In this binary form, Ometeotl produced 4 sons, Huitzilopochtli, Quetzalcoatl, Tezcatlipoca, and Xipe Totec. Each of them was associated with a specific color, bird, and cardinal direction. As Ometeotl retreated to the highest plane of heaven, these four gods created many others, including the rain god Tlaloc. He and Huitzilopochtli were the most venerated among the Mexica, and the Templo Mayor in Tenochtitlan was dedicated to them. Together, the gods created and ruled the universe, which was split into three vertical regions. In the middle was the earth, made from the body of the crocodile sea monster Cipactli. 13 levels of heaven stretched above Cipactli's head, and 9 levels of the underworld stretched below.
The earth was dark, so the gods created a sun to keep it warm and bright. But making something as powerful as the sun is no easy feat, even for a god. It requires sacrifice, which is a central theme in Nahua mythology. Tezcatlipoca, a god of night who was adopted by the Nahuatl from the indigenous Toltec people, became the son of the first creation, but was a weak, nocturnal sun, and was overthrown by his brother Quetzalcoatl, a god of wind, life, and light. Thus started the next cycle of the Nahuatl universe, the one where the first humans were made. But the humans became corrupt, and Quetzalcoatl destroyed them with terrifying hurricanes. The few humans who survived escaped to the tops of trees and became monkeys.
The next sun, or cycle of the universe, was ruled by Tlaloc, the god of rain and thunder. It was a prosperous time until it ended in a barrage of fiery rain. In some legends, Tlaloc sent the fire himself after Tezcatlipoca stole his wife away. In others, it was the ongoing feud between Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca that ended the third sun. The fourth god to sacrifice themselves was Chalchiutlacue, Tlaloc's sister and the goddess of running water. The feuding brothers struck her down, and the world ended in a great flood that collapsed the sky, and all the people were turned into fish. In some stories, Tezcatlipoca taunts her until she cries so many tears that she floods the world. When it came time to create the fifth sun, most of the gods were understandably hesitant to sacrifice themselves. It was Nanahuatzin, the humble, pustulous one, who jumped into the fire first. In doing so, he created Tonatiuh, who, in some stories, ruled over the fifth sun. Not to be outdone, Tetzetzacat jumped in next and became the moon to Nanahuatzin's son. So that they didn't repeat their previous mistakes, the other gods sacrificed their blood to Nanahuatzin to keep him strong. The world under the fifth sun needed people, so Quetzalcoatl descended to Mictlan, the underworld, to retrieve the bones of the first humans. Mictlan-Tecutli, the lord of this land of the dead, told Quetzalcoatl that he could have the bones only if he traveled through all of Mictlan 4 times while blowing a conch shell. But the shell had no holes in it. It goes to show that no matter the culture, you can't expect to get anything from a god without first completing some impossible task. Clever Quetzalcoatl called the worms to chew holes in the shell and filled it with bees so that their buzzing would make the horns sing. When Quetzalcoatl carried the bones up to earth, he ground them up and mixed his blood with the powder to make a paste that was used like Play-Doh to make people. The Nahua believed that they were some of these humans crafted for the fifth sun, and that this world would one day end in a devastating earthquake.
Ritual sacrifice of humans, animals, and food was central to Nahuatl culture, so important that priests supposedly sacrificed 20,000 people in one day to honor the completion of the Great Temple in Tenochtitlan. Some historians say all the sacrifices were meant to instill fear and obedience in the Nahuatl city-states that the Mexica conquered. But according to mythology from the codices, the sacrifices were meant to empower and appease the gods. Following the story of Nanahuatzin's sacrifice, according to Mexica's state ideology, even the sun required the power that blood provided to rise each day.
In the 15th and 16th centuries, this great temple was the seat of both religion and politics of the mighty, warlike Aztec people. Subject and allied cities would visit the temple regularly. The Aztecs' god, Huitzilopochtli, had promised his people a place where they would be the masters of a huge empire. In order to recognize this place, they had to find an eagle perched on a cactus, holding a serpent in its beak. They would then know that this was to be the special place where they would be lords, and where their great capital, Tenochtitlan, would be built. Today, this site is known as Mexico City. The Mexico of the modern world looks with pride upon the symbols of its ancient past. The colors of the Mexican flag, green, white, and red, display at the center the eagle perched upon a cactus.
height of its power. From their capital at Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs controlled much of what is now Mexico and Central America, ruling some 15 million people. Aztec palaces were as vast and sophisticated as any of those in Europe, and their temples rivaled the Egyptian pyramids. But within just 2 years, the mighty Aztec Empire crumbled, and Tenochtitlan lay in ruins after a brutal siege led by Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés. No great ancient civilization ever fell so far, so fast. What happened to the Aztecs? For one thing, they had too many enemies. For years, the Aztecs used brutal force against neighboring tribes and city-states, forcing them to pay costly tributes and hand over victims for the human sacrifices central to the Aztec religion. Cortés turned these people's hatred of the Aztecs to his advantage. Spanish invaders also had superior weapons, plus guns, trained horses and dogs, and fully loaded warships that allowed them to overcome the Aztecs' greater numbers. Ineffective leadership also played a role in the fall of the Aztecs. Their emperor, Montezuma, believed Cortés might be the bearded Aztec god who was prophesied to conquer his people and bring universal peace. Unsure how to confront the Spanish leader, he was captured in 1520 and was later killed, possibly by his own people. His brother Cuitlahuac took over, leading an army that drove the Spaniards from Tenochtitlan. But the Aztecs then confronted another powerful enemy, smallpox. Brought aboard Spanish ships, the disease decimated the Aztec population, killing the new emperor and thousands of others. With the help of several thousand Indians, including Texcacans, Chalca, and Tepanec, Cortés and his Spanish force besieged Tenochtitlan, cutting off the city's water and food supplies. Despite a fierce resistance, the Aztec city fell on August 13, 1521. More than 200,000 people died in the struggle. With the Aztec Empire effectively destroyed, Cortés became governor and captain general of New Spain in 1522. Under Spanish rule, Mexico City rose from the ruins of Tenochtitlan, and Christianity spread throughout the region, replacing the temples and traditions of a once great ancient civilization.
This marvel of Mesoamerican urban development is woefully underappreciated, and it will be my goal today to get you acquainted with its amazing story and layout. 1325, upon an unclaimed marshy island in Lake Texcoco. According to legend, the very spot was marked by the god Huitzilopochtli, who had told the Mexica tribe to seek out an eagle perched on a prickly cactus. A second city was also founded 13 years later by a group of dissident Mexica who set up camp on a twin island just a few hundred meters to the north. This second location would become known as Tlatelolco. At first, both settlements were quite unremarkable, as there were meager building supplies in the area, and people had to survive off the local flora and fauna of the lake. However, due to their position, they could exploit waterborne travel to grow as raiders and traders. Over the decades, the two population centers were able to expand thanks to extensive drainage and construction projects, such as the famed Chinampas. Due to their close proximity, though, the two groups were quite closely intertwined, and often worked, traded, and fought together. During the uprising of 1426, both Tenochtitlan and Tlatelolco would lock arms to take on the city of Azcapotzalco, along with their other two allies in the Triple Alliance. During the following years of the Aztec Empire, both cities would get their share of tribute, plunder, and economic activity that would cause them to expand rapidly. While growth would see their cityscapes merge, the two did seek to preserve their own identity. A quick comparison would reveal that Tenochtitlan had the greater area and population, though Tlatelolco had by far the largest market and main temple. Another further distinction would be their individual rulers, as both cities maintained separate governments. For context, here are both of their royal lineages side by side. You'll note that the Tlatelolco line ends in 1473. This is due to the fact that a family quarrel between rulers escalated into open conflict and saw Tenochtitlan emerge victorious and assert its dominance over Tlatelolco. Thus, from then on, the two cities would formally be joined up until their conquest in 1521 by the Spanish and their allies. Let's now turn to the details of the cityscape itself. This can be a bit overwhelming, so let's first begin by looking at things from a macro level before zooming in to deal with the specifics. To put things simply, the city was located on an island on the western edge of Lake Texcoco and was connected to the mainland by 5 great causeways. It covered 13 square kilometers and was laid out in a dense grid of canals, roads, and buildings. The city was divided into 4 quarters known as Campan. These were then further subdivided into 15 or so districts known as Calpoli. Each of these districts held commoner families led by a set of nobles, with their own marketplace, temple, and school. With this framework in mind, let's now begin filling in the details of the city. We can begin with the most important ceremonial center of Tenochtitlan, the sacred precinct. This walled area encapsulated a wide plaza holding about a dozen important structures. Dominating the center was the 60-meter-tall, twin-peaked Great Temple, with a blue shrine dedicated to Tlaloc, and a red shrine dedicated to Huitzilopochtli. In front of it lay the round temple pyramid of Quetzalcoatl. A variety of other temples, a ball court, and even a school for nobles were arrayed around the remaining ground of the sacred precinct. Just outside the walls were a host of other important buildings used to run the city. These included palaces, homes for dignitaries, marketplaces, and yet more temples. At this point, we would be remiss to skip over some of the incredible features of Moctezuma II's palace, which included a botanical garden, an aviary, a zoo, and even an aquarium. Spanish chroniclers report that the botanical garden contained a great many trees, sweet-scented flowers, and aromatic herbs, which were a pleasure to stroll beside. The aviary is said to have had 10 rooms housing many colorful species and birds of prey. The zoo featured jaguars, pumas, foxes, and snakes, amongst hundreds of other exotic animals, while the aquarium housed yet more creatures in the form of salt and freshwater fish located in separate ponds. This is truly something that must have been incredible to behold. Radiating out from the cluster of buildings around the sacred precinct were 4 major roads. The east led to the docks of Tetamozalco, while the north, south, and west led to the great causeways of Tacuba, Iztapalapa, and Tepeyac.
This Easter at Lidl, get Prosecco for $4.69 with Lidl Plus and enjoy the sparkle of spring.
These were built to accommodate heavy traffic and were so wide that the Spanish noted you could fit 10 horses side by side. Along each of these major highways were located many of the larger city buildings with a series of gates and drawbridges located at the entrances to the city. Co-located with the causeways were also aqueducts, which brought in fresh water from springs on the mainland. These were lined with terracotta bricks and came in paired ducts, such that repairs could take place on one or the other in order to minimize total downtime. I'll also note that water management was a huge focus for the Aztecs, and something they excelled at. As a prime example, the 17-kilometer-long dike of Nezahualcóyotl separated the fresher western Texcoco from the more brackish eastern Texcoco, while also contributing significantly to the dike system for regulating water level around the city. Another important landmark to point out is to the north, in Tlatelolco. As was stated before, it had once been its own city, and therefore still contained many of the